So I has a brew, and this will be like the first official brew time in ages and ages. I apologise about the audio situation. At the moment I'm currently using my Tascam DR40 and my 600D, and I need to get like a decent condenser mic, which I'm going to get sorted this month because it's just crap. I can't use the shotgun mic because the sound sounds terrible. It's also too echoey in here, so I'm going to try and get a condenser mic, put it nice and close, just sort of off frame somewhere so you can hear me better. So I apologise if you can hear me like moving about and touching my tablet, but that's just kind of what we have to put up with for a minute because I haven't got decent sound. So this is actually the first brew time I've done, like a proper brew time I've done in ages and ages and ages. So you'll have to bear with me because I'm just like literally getting back into the swing of things. I was going to do a separate video on the Apple event that happened last week, and I was also going to do a separate video on the PlayStation 4 Pro event, but I didn't because I was like, well, none of them actually really warrant a big video. And basically Apple released a 107-second video on Twitter covering basically everything they released, so there wasn't really much point in me doing a dedicated video for that. In terms of doing releases, I'll just kind of do a bit of a roundup and kind of my own thoughts on it, and that's pretty much it, and then a few other normal brew time kind of stuff. I'm going to try and keep this nice and, well, as short as I can, but it might go on for half an hour. You might want to strap yourselves in, grab yourself a brew, and pause it for a minute, and then come back and then actually watch this fully on Chromecast on a big TV, or I don't know, wherever the hell you fucking watch this shit. Now, before I get into any of the actual news, I wanted to quickly touch on the advertiser demonetization of YouTube recently. I did actually record a separate video on this, but it went on too long and I sounded like an idiot, so I've not actually uploaded that video. But basically I kind of wanted to weigh up, like do my like quick roundup of it all. So if you didn't know, if you've not been following the internet for the past 2 weeks, YouTube has been sending out demonetized alerts to creators. So if you're creating content that's not quote unquote advertiser friendly, they'll demonetize your video and send you an alert about it. Now they've actually been demonetizing videos for quite a while now. This isn't actually a new thing. The new thing is the alert systems. The alert system is a new thing that actually tells you when your video has been demonetized. Now, for me as a creator that has got 2,000 subscribers and is not in this for the money, I'm not in this for the money at all, I don't care. At the end of the day, advertisers will decide what they want to advertise on, and I can't have any say on that. YouTube can do whatever the hell they want because it is their own private proprietary platform. Well, I don't agree that demonetizing videos is necessarily good, because some advertisers will actually, if they do their shit properly, will want to advertise on the racy stuff, on the things like Mr. Epsilon, on the things like Leafy is Here, on the things like H3 Productions, which are sort of parts of like the cringe-worthy parts of the internet. They're kind of almost like the Reddit of YouTube. But advertisers will want to advertise on those platforms because there's millions of people watch that shit every single day. So why would you not want to? You want to get your reach, you want to get your frequency out there. So therefore, it's a good thing for you to be targeting those kinds of videos. But at the same time, there's going to be other brands that won't want to have anything to do with that. So for an example, maybe Holden doesn't want to have their car brand associated with social justice warriors, rape culture, like all that kind of shit. And so therefore they might say, I'm not going to actually advertise on that video. But you can choose that as an advertiser, so I don't quite know why it's such a big thing all of a sudden. But there you go. At the end of the day, for me, I don't care. If videos get monetized, great. If they don't get monetized, I don't care, because I earn so little from this now. It's not worth me doing it for the money. And it never was in the first place. I never started this with the intention of doing it for the money. So yes, that's just my 2 cents. I don't know why YouTubers are bitching too much about it. I know it's annoying because they're losing out money, but let's be honest. It's a risky business to be in YouTube. It's not something that's really safe. It's something that is always going to be dodgy. There's always going to be a potential story that's going to break, that's going to completely ruin your channel and your reputation and the people that subscribe to you. So there we go. But now we've got that kind of shit out of the way, let's talk the Apple event. So they announced the iPhone 7. Some quick points to take away from that. They removed the headphone jack. It has a brighter screen with higher color gamut. Still not 4K screen though. It has an A10 chip. It's waterproof and dustproof. It has a better camera, which is faster, draws less power, and the iPhone 7 has an extra camera, which is a 56mm zoom lens. I'm just going to kind of cover off the iPhone 7 stuff quite quickly because I don't think it's necessarily newsworthy. Most of what Apple released is kind of meh. Better color gamut across the screen is nice. It would be nice for it to be high resolution, but I guess that's kind of quite gimmicky. Samsung have been doing that for a while, for 4K screens or 1440p screens. Do we need it? Probably not. It's nice to have, but it's one of those things that drains the battery. So Is it something that's really, worth including in a flagship smartphone? Maybe not. It has an A10 chip, not really much to write home about. I mean, it's faster, better, whatever than the last one. Not really going to make or break the upgrade, to be honest. The fact it's waterproof and dustproof is something that they should have been doing for ages. This is something that they should have had since like the iPhone 5 at least. I mean, this is something that should have been, I think the only reason that Apple are doing it now is because they have had a lot of criticism about the fact it isn't. And Samsung and OnePlus and like loads of phone manufacturers have been creating these phones which are splash proof or waterproof or dust proof, and Apple has still not been doing that for ages and ages. And especially when, the amount of people I see with iPhones that got cracked screens and just all sorts of stuff anyway, that people do this often and they drop it, and and considering these aren't cheap phones, these aren't like $300 Chinese knockoff phones, these are $900, $1,000 like pieces of tech that people will pay like huge sums of money for, and especially people that can't actually really afford to spend that kind of money on a device. They will spend that kind of stupid amounts of money on a computer in your pocket, right? But they wouldn't spend the same kind of money on an actual PC or a TV, because they can't afford it. And because you have like price plans now, as part of that kind of stuff, it's surprising they haven't introduced this kind of shit before. It's good that they have introduced it now, though, so this is kind of quite good. They showed off all their like special seating and all that kind of bullshit. But yeah, now the one thing I really, really want to talk about a lot is the removal of the headphone jack. Now, Apple are saying that it's courage, and there's been lots of articles denouncing the fact that this is based on courage. This is basically due to other things. There's so many articles around about. I was going to link them all just down in the description, but I can't be bothered now because there's so many. I think the first one was Mashable, and then basically everybody else followed suit. But I kind of agree with most of what people are saying, which is that Apple are not being courageous by removing the audio jack. The audio jack has been around for ages and ages because it's fucking solid and it works and it does the job. There's no requirement to replace it at all. The only reason that Apple would replace the 3.5mm audio jack is because they want to have proprietary walled garden kind of shit. There's two things. Number one, accessory manufacturers are going to be super, super excited about this kind of shit because they can create more and more stuff. They can create more headphones, they can create more devices, they can create more adapters. Because for them, that's great. There's a great business for them. For Apple, it means that things like Beats and things like their new EarPods and or AirPods or whatever the hell they're calling them, things like that, Bluetooth tech, all that kind of stuff, is going to be coming to the forefront. More and more people are going to buy it. But at the end of the day, they're still going to include EarPods, and they're still going to include an adapter for the 3.5mm jack. So, it doesn't scream Apple design. Having a dongle for 3.5mm, really? But here's the thing. It's not up to me to decide whether or not Apple is being really fucking stupid here. It's not up to any other geek to turn around and say, oh, look, Apple's done something really stupid. I personally think it's fucking ridiculous. But I'm not the customer that Apple is going after. They are going after people that just want a phone that fucking works, and they are quite happy to invest the money into that specific platform. We're talking about people that are going to buy an iPhone, and they're going to buy an iPhone year after year after year, or every 2 years, or whatever. They're not going to swap and change too much between Android and iPhone. Now, sure, they might transition between Samsung and Apple. That's pretty much what people might do. They might go, actually, I might go down the Samsung S7 route because it's waterproof and it's dustproof and it's better and da-da-da. But is this going to make or break anything for Apple? Are they going to reintroduce the 3.5mm jack because they realise they fucked up? Probably not, because most people that are still going to buy the iPhone 7 because it's better, it's faster, it's whatever. So I don't think it really matters too much for people that are actually going to buy the iPhone for what it is. I don't think people are going to give a shit. People are still going to buy Beats. They're still going to buy... People forget, right? Geeks forget that we're not the demographic of what most people in the world are buying Apple products for. Most people in the world are buying Apple products because they want something that's seamless, they want something that's fashionable, something that looks cool, something that's like, oh, look at what I've got the latest and greatest thing. People like me, I'm going to buy a OnePlus 3 because it's fucking cool and it's better and it's cheaper and it's, for me personally as a geek, that's what I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy the Pixel C. I'm not going to go and buy an iPad because I'm a geek and I like things that I can control and I prefer that kind of shit. I'm not personally going to buy a Mac again because of the fucking problems I've had with it before. So and the people that are pretty much watching this are not the demographic that Apple are going for. They're going to take a risk, they're going to take a chance and see how it goes. I have a sneaky suspicion that it's not going to make an ounce of fucking difference to the sale of this device. It's still going to sell really well, and they're probably not going to reintroduce the 3.5mm jack. People might get pissed off with it, yeah, and sure, some customers will be driven to other platforms. They're like, I've got these really fucking good headphones, I don't want to replace them, and I don't want to use a shitty dongle which is going to snap. The actual benefits, I have to say, there's some really good things that Apple have done. Although they've introduced this shit, they have included an adapter in the case for free, and it's only $9 to replace it. That's not bad. They've also included some other headphones in the box which also use the Lightning connector. There's only really one thing which is going to annoy people to no end, which is that you can't charge and play music at the same time. That's one thing that is going to be fucking annoying as shit. Superbly annoying. But I don't think that's necessarily... I mean, you can buy a dongle for that kind of shit. You know, if you're really that way inclined, you can buy a dongle for that shit. You know, if you are wanting to plug your iPhone into a stereo system, then you're going to have a dongle. I know it doesn't look as nice. The design-wise looks shit, and it's not a very Apple thing to do. They're all about design and simplicity, and, you know... But that's kind of... You know, there's still ways around it, and most people would still happily use Bluetooth headphones because they're going to be good enough. People are still going to happily use cheap, shitty headphones because they're going to be good enough. You know, most people are not audiophiles. Most people are not going to be spending $200+ on headphones. They're not going to be doing that. So let's take a step back. Let's realise that actually Apple is not for the likes of you and me. Apple is for the consumers. Apple is for every average day guy on the street, the guy that does cleaning, the guy that's a security guard, the guy that's the stockbroker, the guy that goes and collects your groceries, the guy that cuts your hair. I'm saying guy is a generic non-binary term for every person in the world, by the way. It means guys and girls in that kind of whole thing. Before the social justice warriors get onto it and go, oh, well, you said guy, all that kind of bullshit. But yes, that's kind of like my rant on the 3.5mm jack situation. The extra camera on the iPhone 7 Plus, I'm not a fan of how they've implemented it. I don't like the fact that I do like the fact you can switch between the two of them, but what I prefer them to do is have it whereby they combine both the images from both cameras into one, so that if I take an image and I want to be able to zoom it in with a telephoto lens, I can. Or if the iPhone can detect that it's a macro image, it won't use the telephoto lens, so I won't have that ability to zoom because it'll be out of focus. But that's the kind of stuff I want it to be able to do. I want it to be able to combine those two images into one. That's what most smartphones that have got two cameras, they do that. Now, admittedly, it's quite difficult to do, and it's quite difficult to do well. But at the end of the day, I think that's actually probably quite a good idea to be able to do. I'm not a fan of the fact that you have to be able to do, to use two lenses, you have to manually select the lens you want. I don't think most people want that kind of functionality, but I don't know. Look, this is early days. This is something that Apple has recently introduced, so we'll have to see. It's a new feature, so we'll see. We'll take a step back and we'll worry about it later. Apple also announced a new watch, which is nothing really to write home about. It's now waterproof, so you can swim with it up to 50 meters in depth. And they released a Nike one, and that's basically it. There's nothing really for you to worry about it. I wouldn't worry about upgrading if you've got a current first gen one, unless you really, really want to. For the better processor, maybe. There's no point. And yeah, the earpods thing, they introduced this new W1 chip, which Beats is now going to use as well, which is like this new funky wireless fidelity thing. Basically Bluetooth 4.0, or whatever the current generation of Bluetooth is. So yeah, I'm not really fussed about that. Now let's talk about PlayStation 4. I'm not going to go through the specs because it's not relevant. You can read all the articles you want to read about that kind of shit. But it's basically introduced HDR, and it's basically better graphics, and that's basically it. There's nothing in this that's kind of making me think, yeah, PlayStation 4 Pro is really, really cool. It's really amazing. It's so much better than the Xbox One S. Yeah, no, it's not. It's a little bit better than the current PlayStation 4, sure. But the PlayStation 4 has been out for ages and ages and ages, so that's not a hard thing to be able to do. Is it going to go head-to-head with Xbox One S? Yes, I think so. In terms of specs, pretty much. I mean, it's got better, faster RAM. It's got maybe slightly less graphics, I think. But the PlayStation 4 is the best-selling console over the Xbox. Xbox was actually trolling the PlayStation 4 release because they're like, Xbox is so good, and we've got backwards compatibility, and we've got mods, and we've got all this kind of stuff, and we've also got Blu-ray support for 4K, and the PlayStation 4 Pro doesn't. But at the same time, I think a lot of people probably will still buy this. I personally won't. Now, I was going to go and get an Xbox One S, and I probably still will at some point. Between now and Christmas, I will, because I do miss gaming on gaming on anything. I've got nothing to game on at the moment. I've literally just got a laptop or two laptops, and that's it. I've got nothing really else to game on. So I will buy an Xbox One S at some point, but I might also hold out for Project Scorpio. Now, Project Scorpio is interesting. Although Windows 10 now introduces things like the ability to play games, Xbox games, on a PC with more powerful graphics, all that kind of shit, I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see how that might go. It depends on the cost of the device. If the cost of the device is an extra $100 or £100 on top of the cost of a standard Xbox One, I might go for it, especially if the performance is so much better. But if it's not, if it's like $500, $600, I might as well build my own fucking rig and rig up to a PC, rig up to the TV. Because I'm perfectly competent to be able to do that. And Core i5s are like pathetically small. You can actually build yourself a really good gaming rig without all the mod cons, without the top of the range graphics, and without the top of the range CPUs, and without the top of the range SSDs and things like that. You could build yourself a pretty sick rig for $500. I think PlayStation 4 are doing, or Sony are doing quite a good thing here. They're bridging the gap between the next iteration of what the console will be and Christmas. So people are going to be buying this for Christmas. This is what it is all about. The Xbox One S is going to be the Christmas device, as is the PlayStation. This is what this is for. It's for the Christmas market. Now, sure, in Q1 2017, Q2, whatever, they're going to release other devices that are going to be better, faster, stronger, whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, personally, I would prefer that they release this kind of shit more readily. Like an iPhone, like Samsung does. Just release devices constantly. Do a yearly cycle, whatever. Considering how expensive most modern smartphones are, most modern tablets are, most modern laptops are, whatever. People replace their phone every year, 2 years. Why do they not do that with consoles? Because as long as you have compatibility between all platforms, you have the latest and greatest tech, you have the latest and greatest CPU, GPUs, all that kind of stuff. Power, reduced power, HDR, 4K, all that kind of shit. I think that's where a lot of console manufacturers would probably be better placed doing. Now, I know there's lots of research and development that goes into this shit, but I think they would probably get more sales as a result. I think people might be a bit pissed off that this is the kind of way it's going to go. But when you consider the fact that the PC gaming market is skyrocketing at the moment, because Xbox is now on PC, and because YouTube, new media is his big thing, gamers are now starting to switch more to PC than they have ever before. Now, that doesn't mean the PC is the most popular platform. By far, it's not. And it will never be, because it's so much more expensive, and you have to have other peripherals to go on top of it. So you buy an Xbox One, you buy a PlayStation, you just buy that and the game, and you've already got TV usually. But with a PC, you've got to buy a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor. And then you're like, well, I might as well buy a cheap, shitty monitor. I might as well get a decent gaming monitor, which is $200, $300. The average everyday person is not going to do that. And also, there's extra space. You've got to have a desk. You've got to have a room. You've got to have somewhere to play it. Whereas most people have got a living room with a TV in it, and they can just hook up a device to it straight away, and that's it. But most kids these days have got TVs in their rooms. At the end of the day, consoles are a way for people that like gaming to get into this hobby really cheaply. Yes, okay, it's still going to be what, 200? Well, no, I think it's $540 Australian dollars to get the Xbox One through the official Microsoft store. I think you can get it for $500 through JB Hi-Fi and a few other places here. But that's a lot of money actually to be spending on a gaming console. Most people don't want to be spending that kind of money. Most people want to be spending $250 on something like that. That's kind of where people's price points usually are, especially for children, especially for families. But look, let's wait for it to debut. Let's wait for people to buy this shit before we start making the outlandish claims that, PlayStation 4 Pro is really crap. It's what. Yes, okay, it might be for the likes of you and me. It's not going to be the amazing, ridiculous thing that we would hope for. But it's bridging the gap between now and where Xbox, when the Project Scorpio comes out for Xbox, and then PlayStation will probably release something else that's going to be a rival to that, maybe. I'm not too sure. I'm not convinced that most people are going to be buying Project Scorpio anyway, because unless it is, like I say, $100 more expensive and you get so much better performance, I don't think most people will bother with it. If it's $1,000, then you might as well fucking buy and build your own PC. And let's be real, you don't even have to build your own shit anymore. You can go to pretty much any big company that sells PC parts, and they will fucking build you a PC that is basically balls to the walls amazing for $500. Look at overclockers. You look at what's over here, M-Wave over here. There's loads of companies that do this kind of shit. People that sell, even like the likes of eBuyer and Amazon will even sell you that kind of shit now. And people on eBay have been doing that kind of shit for years. So yes, that's the big 2 bits of news I wanted to cover: Sony and PlayStation. 2 little bits to end on, really, in terms of standard brew time kind of news. Google is going to flag any HTTP website that sends across passwords and credit card information as insecure, which is fantastic. So Google Chrome 56, 59, I think it's 56, which is going to debut in January, is going to include this flag. So before, when you used to access websites that were insecure, their certificate expired on a HTTPS site, it goes, do not proceed, it's dangerous, da da da. They're going to do that kind of shit with HTTP websites that try and send passwords and credit card information across unsecured connections. This is really, really good. And this is something that should have been happening for ages and ages because, most people, I think, well, no, actually, that's a lie. People in my position are sensible, and most of you watching are quite sensible. If you see a non-HTTPS address and it's getting you to submit passwords through that, you're going to be a bit questionable about that kind of shit. The same with credit card information. You're always going to be questioning whether or not actually that's secure. And I always do check, always. But the fact that it actually flags that shit up automatically, like a big huge screen that stops the average user from proceeding, is really fucking good. I like that kind of shit. Google is doing a lot of really good stuff in terms of info security here to protect the average user, and I love that. I love that kind of shit because it makes my job easier. Sure, I don't work in IT support anymore, but it'll make my job easier in the future when I maybe go back into that industry. I think this is kind of quite a good thing. I would like to see other browser makers do this kind of shit. I'd like to see Internet Explorer, Edge introduce this shit, even though hardly anybody fucking uses it. I'd like to see Firefox do the same. I'd like to see Apple do the same with Safari. Google Chrome is the most used browser in the world, pretty much. So this is, well, if you on desktop, this is on desktop, not on mobile. Although on mobile probably is Chrome as well. I've not checked, so don't quote me on that. And then the one last final thing to end on is the USB killer. Now, this has been out for a while, and this has been like in sort of development for at least a year, if not more than that. So there's a company that produces a thing called the USB Killer, and they've released a thing publicly called the USB Killer 2.0, and it was blown up on Twitter today. It was trending everywhere. It was in the likes of Forbes and IB Times and Business Insider and all the kinds of places that just put, will report news on popular shit that they like on Twitter and social medias and stuff like that. The USB Killer basically fries any device it's plugged into, no matter what it is. If it's got a USB port on it, it can fry the motherfucking shit out of that device. Whether or not it's a TV, whether or not it's a laptop, desktop, a security camera, whatever the fuck it is, it can fry that shit. They claim it's 95% of all consumer devices are vulnerable to this. So let me give you a bit of backstory as to where this has come from. So, some researchers created this shit. They're like an info security researcher, scientist, engineer, whatever the fuck you want to call them. They created a USB device that basically you plug it in, it charges a capacitor internally from the USB, and then sends voltage and amperage back to the device, and completely fries whatever it's connected to. So that's a desktop, TV, as I mentioned. And they released this privately to manufacturers like a year ago. So this wasn't available publicly, so you couldn't buy the device publicly. So they released this to like private individuals, so hardware manufacturers, the likes of Apple, likes of Samsung, likes of Dell, likes of Asus, that kind of stuff, and said, look, hey, there's this vulnerability we found out that this could really fucking fuck your shit up. You need to introduce some new stuff to stop this shit happening. They've now turned around and said, we're going to make this shit public because none of you are fucking listening to us. And so you can buy this device for $50. And I think it's really important here to note that this is really important for info security purposes and for vulnerability purposes. The reason most security researchers will release things privately to industries so that they can patch their shit up. They'll release things to Google, they'll release things to Facebook and say, hey, look, there's this thing we found that's really dangerous, you should fucking fix this shit. And they fix this shit, no one knows about it, all is well. And then in a year's time, they release it publicly or whatever. Well, they don't release it at all because they're like, oh no, they patched the shit and it's all good. And for something like this, if manufacturers of software or hardware do not take this advice and warning and say, okay, shit, we need to fix this shit, and they don't fix this shit and someone releases that stuff, it number one, it does two things. Number one, it makes manufacturers and software vendors wake the fuck up and go, shit, they're actually releasing this publicly now, we need to do something about it. Number two, media gets wind of it and users get wind of it and they get really pissed off about that kind of shit. And they're like, why the fuck did you not patch this a year ago? So Apple apparently is the only manufacturer of devices that's actually implemented a way in which this kind of attack can be mitigated. So if you plug a USB killer into a MacBook, a new MacBook or a new MacBook Pro or whatever, it's not going to be susceptible to this kind of attack, which is really fucking good. You know, props to Apple for this kind of shit. I think Apple does a really good job of kind of doing. Although, if you watch Louis Rossmann on YouTube, he slates Apple's hardware all the time, and you know, fair enough. It's stupidly difficult to fix third party, but you know, I think Apple are doing quite a good thing here. They're doing a really good service for their consumers and customers. That's the only thing I will say about Apple, about the fact that I slated Apple before about hardware and why I will never buy an Apple device again. They make the best laptop in the world ever, period. Like, ignore the software for a minute. The MacBook is the best laptop in the world. You cannot get a Windows device. Even the XPS 13 is not as nice and slick and as beautiful and all-in-one and unibody and all that kind of stuff as the MacBook Pro is, or as the MacBook as a thing is anyway. It is the best laptop period ever. Now, I don't like Mac OS. I would definitely put Windows on that shit, but it is the best laptop you can ever get. Not for hardware, no. Not for hardware at all. In terms of specs, no, certainly not. You can get a Windows PC that's better, faster, cheaper, but it will not look as nice. It will not, it will perform probably better, but it won't look as nice. And also, it will be susceptible to the USB killer stuff. So I will put links in the description for all that kind of shit. This hasn't been the best brew time in the world, but it's been, this has been a long time coming. I've not done a proper brew time for fucking ages and ages and ages. My AMA is still going, hashtag AziAMA on Twitter, Facebook, comments, wherever the fuck you want to put it. I've not actually done that yet because no one's fucking asked me any fucking questions. So including the 5 people that actually asked me to do the fucking shit in the first place, none of you have actually asked me any questions. So head over to my AMA video, send some comments across there, hit me up on curiouscat.me/ashychill, twitter.com/ashychill, Facebook/ashychill as well, Instagram, although most people probably won't be interested in my Instagram on there. Oh, one thing before I go, there's some new VI which you might see actually coming around in terms of the overall layouts of thumbnails. I do need to update the backgrounds of everything in YouTube and stuff, and Twitter and all that kind of shit, and I will eventually do it. But I'm using this new VI for a minute to see how well it goes, see what you guys think. If you fucking hate it, let me know. If you fucking love it, then like, subscribe, all that other funky shit. And apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video.